Rain was supposed to wash her bad date away. Instead, it stranded a thick, broken-hearted woman in a dead car with mascara on her cheeks. Until a stranger in a soaked hoodie knocked on her window and said, "I'm not leaving you in this storm, unless you tell me to." Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe, tap like, and share this video. The more voices we reach, the louder these stories become. And drop your city in the comments. Let's see where love finds us. Rain didn't just fall that night, it attacked. It came in hard, slanting sheets that blurred the city into streaks of light and shadow. Wind shoved against traffic lights until they swayed like they might snap. Shop awnings flapped. Puddles merged into shallow lakes. Thunder rolled over everything like a warning that no one listened to. Ember Collins stood in it anyway. Her rideshare had dropped her off 2 blocks from her apartment because the driver didn't want to risk the flood. Her heels were already ruined, her thick, curvy body shivering under a coat that was better suited for Instagram than survival. Green satin clung to her hips and thighs, soaked through, turning her dress into a second skin that made her painfully aware of every curve she'd spent most of her life trying to hide. She hugged her arms around herself, rain stinging the bare skin of her chest where the dress dipped low. Her damp blonde hair stuck to her cheeks, mascara bleeding into the storm. This was supposed to be a good night. She could still hear her date's voice over the clink of glasses and soft jazz at the restaurant. "You're not really like your pictures, are you?" he'd said, with a little laugh, eyes sliding down her body like she was a faulty product. "You're beautiful, don't get me wrong. Just more. More." The word sat in her chest like a stone. She'd smiled anyway. She always did. She'd made a joke, changed the subject, paid for her half, and left that table with her head high and her heart chewing itself apart. She promised herself she wouldn't cry about it. Not anymore. Not over some man whose jawline she'd liked more than his personality. But now, as thunder cracked again and icy water soaked through to her underwear, she felt the first hot tear slip down. Her car sat where she'd left it, parked under a dim, flickering street lamp. She fumbled with her keys, fingers stiff from the cold. She slid into the driver's seat, breathing out in relief at the tiny, familiar space that smelled faintly of vanilla and coffee. She turned the key. The engine coughed. She tried again. It gave a low, tired groan and went dead. "No," Ember whispered. No, not tonight. Come on, baby, please." She tried again and again, the same sick little sound. A whimper escaped her throat. She slammed her palm against the steering wheel, once, twice, a third time so hard the horn blared, loud and absurd in the empty street. It startled her into a shaky laugh that broke halfway through. "Yeah," she muttered, voice thick. "Scream about it. That'll fix everything." Another tear slid down, then another. Soon it was impossible to tell what on her face was rain and what was hurt that had nowhere else to go. Lightning lit the sky, white and violent. Thunder followed almost immediately. She dropped her forehead to the steering wheel and shut her eyes. For a moment, all she could hear was rain hammering the roof and her own shallow breathing. A shadow moved in front of the car. She stiffened. Someone knocked gently on her window. Ember's head snapped up, heart punching against her ribs. A tall figure stood under the deluge, rain plastering a dark hoodie to broad shoulders. The streetlight behind him turned him into a silhouette with only hints of detail. Strong jaw, short-cropped hair, dark skin gleaming wet. He lifted both hands in a harmless gesture and spoke, his voice muffled through the glass, but still somehow warm. "Hey, you okay in there?" A dozen warnings flashed through her head. Don't talk to strangers. Don't open your door. Don't trust anyone. Especially not late at night. Especially not when you're vulnerable. But something in his tone wasn't sharp or impatient. It was concerned. Gentle, even. She cracked the window the tiniest bit. Rain pushed in through the gap. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice wobbling. "Just my car. It won't start." He looked at the vehicle, then back at her, squinting to see past the reflection on the wet glass. His gaze flicked over her damp hair, smudged makeup, the too fancy dress in a too empty car. "You don't look fine," he said softly. "You look freezing." She let out a humorless laugh. "That obvious, huh?" Another flash of lightning. He flinched slightly, then shoved his hands into his hoodie pocket, like he was resisting the urge to yank the door open and drag her somewhere safe. "I live just down the street," he said, nodding toward the row of brick buildings behind them. Building with the busted security light out front. I've got tools. I can take a quick look at your car if you want, or I can call a tow guy I know. And then this won't rip you off. The old Ember, the one from a few years ago, would have apologized for the inconvenience, would have insisted he was already doing too much just by stopping. Tonight's Ember, soaked and tired and raw, just said, "Why?" He blinked. "Why what?" "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked, surprising herself with how sharp it sounded. "You don't even know me." He was quiet for a moment, rain drumming on his hood. Then he tilted his head slightly, as if choosing his words with care. "Because I've been the person stuck in the storm before," he said simply. "And it sucks." Something in her chest cracked. He stepped closer to the window. Up close, she could see his face more clearly now. Dark brown eyes, rain clinging to his lashes, full mouth curved in a small, tentative smile. He was beautiful in a way that made her stomach flip, but it wasn't just that. There was a steadiness about him, like he'd seen some things and decided he wasn't going to let the world be harsher than it had to be. "I'm Malik, by the way," he added. "Malik Carter. Promise I'm not a serial killer, just a guy who works too many night shifts and hates seeing people stranded." Ember hesitated, every caution drilled into her, warring with the part of her that was so tired of doing everything alone. She opened the door. Cold air slammed into her. Goosebumps rose along the soft skin of her bare arms as she stepped out, dress clinging like paint. She tugged her useless coat tighter around her, suddenly self-conscious of how much of her curvy body was on display under the wet fabric. Malik's eyes flicked down for the briefest second. He was human after all, but when they came back up, there was no mockery. No judgment, just concern. "You're shaking," he said quietly. "Here." He shrugged out of his hoodie and held it out to her. Underneath, he wore a faded black t-shirt that clung to a chest and arms that looked like they'd spent more time lifting real things than dumbbells. "I can't take that," Ember protested automatically. "You'll freeze." "I'm good," he said. "You're the one in a dress." The way he said dress, like it was something precious and not ridiculous, sent heat straight to her throat. She took the hoodie, the inside still warm from his body, and slipped it on. It swallowed her. Soft and oversized, his scent wrapping around her. Soap, rain, a hint of motor oil and something like cedar. He popped the hood of her car and leaned over the engine, rain soaking his t-shirt, muscles shifting under the thin fabric. Ember hugged the hoodie tighter around herself and watched him work, his hands moving with practiced ease, brow furrowing in concentration. "Battery's not totally dead," he murmured after a few minutes, mostly to himself. "But she's not happy either." He straightened, water streaming down his face. "If you keep cranking her like that, you're going to finish her off." "Story of my life," Ember muttered before she could stop herself. He gave her a sideways look, a half-smile tugging at his mouth. "Rough night?" She swallowed. The words sat heavy on her tongue. "My date told me I didn't look like my pictures," she said, the confession spilling out with the rain. Then he spent the rest of the evening suggesting I should try Pilates and order a salad instead. "So yeah, you could say that." Anger flickered across Malik's face, quick and sharp. "He actually said that to you?" he asked. "Out loud?" "Men love to be brave when the bill's under $100, she said, trying to make it a joke. It came out brittle. "It's whatever. I'm used to it." "You shouldn't be," he said, voice low. Thunder rumbled. For a heartbeat, they just stood there, her in his hoodie, him in the rain, the storm roaring around them like the world had shrunk to this little circle of light and water and breath. Malik wiped water from his eyes with the back of his hand. "Okay," he said. "Here's the deal. I can't fix this out here tonight. You need a new battery at least, maybe a clean-up on some connections. But I'm not letting you stand in a thunderstorm waiting for a random tow in that dress." He gestured toward his building, just visible down the block. "My sister's out of town," he added quickly, as if anticipating her fear. "It's just me. Small apartment, ugly couch, dry blankets. You can warm up, call whoever you need, figure out the car in the morning when the world isn't trying to drown us. You don't owe me anything. If you're not comfortable, I'll stay out here with you till someone comes. But I'm not walking away." The wind shoved at her, rain needling her cheeks. Her phone was down to 8%. The street was empty. The idea of waiting for a tow truck for an hour like this made her bones ache. "Why do you care so much?" she whispered. He met her eyes, no flinch, no hesitation. "Because everybody deserves shelter," he said, "especially on the night someone made them feel like they don't." Her throat closed. She should say no. It would be safer, easier. But the way he stood there with open hands offering warmth instead of pressure felt like the first honest thing anyone had given her in a long time. "Okay," Ember said finally, voice small but steady. "I'll come. Just let me grab my bag." He nodded once, relief flickering in his gaze. As she reached into the car, he shifted instinctively to shield her from the worst of the rain, broad body between her and the storm without even thinking about it. For the first time that night, she didn't feel like a problem to be fixed or a body to be judged. She felt sheltered. And as they started walking together through the pouring rain toward the dim, ugly lit building that he called home, Ember had the strangest feeling that the storm hadn't just ruined her night. It might have just changed her life. The stairwell smelled like old paint and someone's leftover takeout. Water dripped from the edges of Ember's hair onto Malik's hoodie, darkening the already damp fabric. Her heels clicked on each concrete step, then slipped a little. Malik's hand hovered near her elbow, not touching, just there, ready if she needed it. That tiny detail made her chest feel strange. "Careful," he said quietly. "I'm good," she replied, even as her ankle wobbled again. He huffed a soft laugh. "Says the woman walking a catwalk in a thunderstorm." "At least if I fall, I'll go out on brand," Ember muttered. He glanced back at her with a quick, surprised grin. It lit up his whole face, making him look younger, less tired. She realized then that under the dim hallway lights he had faint shadows under his eyes, like sleep, and he weren't exactly close friends. He unlocked a door marked 3B with peeling gold numbers and pushed it open. "Welcome to my palace," he said wryly. It was small. Ember took that in instantly. One main room, the faint glow of a bedroom through a cracked door, a narrow kitchen. But it was warm, lived in. A deep blue couch with a throw blanket folded sharply over the back. A low coffee table with a small stack of books, some about cars, some about grief, one about breaking cycles of poverty. A plant in the corner that looked surprisingly alive. Shoes lined up neatly by the door. "Sorry it's not much," Malik said behind her, suddenly sounding self-conscious. "I keep meaning to fix up the walls, but the landlord and I have this ongoing war about what qualifies as my job and what's structure." Ember stepped all the way inside, water from her clothes dripping quietly onto the worn wooden floor. "It's more than I have," she said softly. He frowned. "You have an apartment, right?" "Yeah. I mean," she shrugged one shoulder, "I don't have a place that feels like this." He followed her gaze as she took in the space again. The candle burned halfway down on the shelf, the photo on the wall of Malik with a woman who shared his eyes, both of them laughing mid-motion. There was a feeling here, threaded through every object. Care. Malik cleared his throat. "Let me grab you a towel. You can sit, or stand, or pace in small, anxious circles, whatever works." She laughed, some of the tightness in her chest loosening. He disappeared into the tiny hallway. Left alone, Ember stood in the middle of the room and suddenly became acutely aware of her body again. Her dress clung to every curve, soft stomach, wide hips, thick thighs. Malik's hoodie helped, but it didn't erase her shape. In her world, shape was always something to apologize for, to hide, to manage. Tonight she had been reminded again how disappointing that shape was to some men. She wondered what Malik saw. He came back with a big, fluffy towel and another blanket draped over his arm. "Okay," he said, stepping closer, but not too close. "I have a complicated proposal." "I'm listening," Ember replied, trying to sound lighter than she felt. "You're freezing and probably one sneeze away from calling in sick tomorrow," he said. "I have a dryer. I can throw your dress and coat in there and give you something of mine to wear while they dry. You keep the hoodie, non-negotiable, but it means you'd be in, like, sweats and a t-shirt. And I know I am a stranger, so if that makes you uncomfortable at all, we can work around it. Layers of blankets, maybe a strategic trash bag poncho." The way he rambled at the end, cheeks darkening just a fraction, made her smile in spite of herself. "You talk a lot when you're trying to be respectful, huh?" she asked. "Yeah," he admitted. "I've been told." He held out the towel. She took it, fingers brushing his for the quickest second. There was that strange feeling again, a fluttering in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature. "To be honest," Ember said slowly, "the idea of getting out of this dress is the best offer I've had all night." His eyes widened. She realized how that sounded and groaned, pressing the towel to her face. "Oh my God, I did not mean it like that." Malik laughed, a real laugh this time, low and warm. "I knew what you meant. Promise? Bedroom's down the hall, first door on the right. There's some clean clothes on the bed. Take your time." She nodded, suddenly shy. As she walked past him, he stepped out of her way, giving her space, gaze respectfully averted. No lingering on her backside, no long appraising look at her figure. The absence of it messed with her more than any lingering stare would have. In the small bedroom, Ember shut the door and leaned against it for a moment, breathing. The room was simple, a full-sized bed, a small dresser, another plant that was somehow alive, a window streaked with rain. On the bed lay a neatly folded pair of sweatpants and a soft-looking T-shirt that smelled faintly of detergent and Malik. Ember caught her reflection in the mirror above the dresser. A thick, curvy woman in a soaked green dress, mascara smudged, blonde hair tangled. Her collarbone gleamed where droplets clung to it. Her eyes looked tired and younger and older all at once. "Don't cry," she whispered to herself. "You have done enough of that for men who didn't deserve it." She peeled off the dress, wincing at the cold cling of the fabric. She folded it carefully, more from habit than necessity, and laid it on the chair. The sweatpants were huge on her, the waistband cinching tight at her waist, the legs pooling around her ankles. The T-shirt hit mid-thigh. Over both, his hoodie felt like a shield. For the first time that night, she felt safe in her own skin. When she emerged, Malik was in the kitchen, pouring hot water into 2 mismatched mugs. His T-shirt was new, dry, and his hair was damp but not dripping. He glanced up, and for a second, words fled him. Ember tugged at the hem of the hoodie. "I know I look like I'm about to join your basketball team." "You look," he stopped, recalibrated. "Warm, that's the goal. Here." He lifted a mug. "It's just tea, mint, no secret potions." She took it, the heat seeping into her hands. "Thanks." They settled on opposite ends of the couch, a respectful distance apart. The rain outside had softened to a steady hiss against the windows. "So," Malik said, blowing on his tea, "Ember." "You remembered my name," she said, a little surprised. He gave her a look. "You think I regularly lasso women out of storms and forget their names?" "Do you regularly lasso women out of storms?" She shot back. He grinned. "Only on Tuesdays." It was Thursday, she realized, her lips curved. They fell into a quiet silence for a moment, the kind that felt less like awkwardness and more like space. The TV was off. No background noise except the rain and the low hum of the fridge. "What do you do?" Ember asked finally. "When you're not rescuing stranded women and arguing with landlords." "2 jobs, Malik said. "I'm a mechanic at a shop during the day. Nights I work at a community shelter 3 times a week. Tonight was supposed to be my off night." He shrugged. "Guess I got a different kind of shelter duty." Of course, she thought. Motor oil and books about grief. It fit. "What about you?" he asked. "What does Ember Collins do when she's not dodging diet suggestions during dinner?" She snorted. "I'm a freelance graphic designer, mostly branding and social media stuff for small businesses, which is a fancy way of saying I make logos for people who want to pay me half my rate and call it exposure." "Sounds rough." "It pays the rent," she said. "Most months. Sometimes it pays in anxiety and vibes." He nodded like he knew that currency well. "Can I ask you something?" Malik said after a moment. "Is this where you tell me I don't look like my pictures too?" Ember asked lightly, though there was a sharp edge under the joke. His eyes darkened. "No, it's where I ask why that comment hit you like a truck." She flinched. He'd seen more than she wanted him to. She stared into her tea, watching the steam twist and fade. "Because it wasn't new," she said quietly. "That's all." He waited, not filling the silence with his own story, not rushing her. "When I was a teenager," Ember continued, fingers tracing the rim of her mug, "every woman I saw on TV who got the guy looked one way. You know the look. Flat stomach, tiny waist, legs that went on for miles. And I never looked like that. I grew sideways before I grew up." She huffed a humorless laugh. "My mom was always dieting," she went on. "Always complaining about her problem areas. She'd squeeze my waist and say stuff like, 'We have to make sure you don't end up like me, right?' Like I was a project, like the worst thing I could become was this. She gestured vaguely at her body under the fabric. Men learn that language too, Ember said. They just say it differently. You'd be perfect if you lost a little weight. You have such a pretty face. Or tonight's fun variation, you're more than I expected. She looked up, eyes bright with something raw. It gets old, but it also never stops hurting. Malik's jaw worked. He set his mug down slowly, as if he didn't trust his grip. I'm sorry, he said. You didn't say it, she replied. I'm still sorry, he said, voice thicker now. Sorry that the world trained you to measure yourself by people who were never worth your time. Her throat tightened. What about you? She asked. You said you've been the person stuck in the storm before. He swallowed, gaze dropping to his hands. My mom, he said quietly. She worked herself to the bone. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. We lived 1 paycheck away from losing everything all the time. When I was 15, our car broke down in the worst part of town during a storm like this. No one stopped, not 1 car, not 1 person. She was out there trying to push it herself in heels from her 2nd job, and people just looked away. He exhaled, the memory clearly still alive behind his eyes. A guy finally stopped, Malik said. Old beat-up truck, more rust than paint. He got soaked trying to help us jump the car. Then when that didn't work, he drove us home. He didn't flirt with my mom. He didn't charge us. He just said, storms are easier when someone stands in it with you. And then he left. Ember felt her chest ache. After she died, Malik added softly, I promised myself I'd never be the person who looked away. So yeah, I stop. For broken cars. For people who look like they're holding themselves together with duct tape and a prayer. I can't fix everything, but I can stand in the storm with them for a while. The room was suddenly too full of feeling. Ember blinked back tears. Is that why you work at the shelter? She asked. Yeah, he said. Partly. Also because people love to donate old clothes and canned food, but they forget that being seen is a kind of shelter too. Their eyes met, something quiet and electric passing between them. You know, Ember said after a moment, voice wavering, tonight I felt like I was too much and not enough at the same time. Too much body, not enough worth. Too much emotion, not enough chill. Too needy, not desirable enough. But sitting here. She glanced around the small apartment, then back at him. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm taking up the wrong kind of space. Malik's gaze softened in a way that made her stomach flip. You're not, he said. You're allowed to exist exactly as you are without apologizing for the dimensions. Her laugh came out as a half-sob. She pressed the heel of her hand to her eyes, trying to be subtle and failing miserably. I'm sorry, she said. I don't usually trauma dump on men within an hour of meeting them. Hey, his voice was gentle. You met me in a thunderstorm. Normal rules don't apply. Ember lowered her hand. Malik was watching her like she was something fragile and fierce at the same time. Do you want to sleep? He asked quietly. You can take the bed. I'll crash out here. We'll call someone about your car in the morning. You're not taking your own bed, she protested. Ember, I'm a grown man. I've fallen asleep under car lifts. This couch is the Ritz compared to that. She hesitated, exhaustion tugging at her bones. The thought of climbing into a bed that smelled like him in a room that felt safe brought a different kind of flutter. Okay, she said softly. Just for tonight. He nodded and stood, grabbing an extra pillow from the chair and dropping it on the couch. As she headed toward the bedroom, she paused in the doorway and looked back. Malik? Yeah? Thank you, she said, for standing in the storm with me. His answering smile was small and real and something she felt all the way in her ribs. Anytime, he said. That's what shelter's for. She went to his room and crawled into the bed, listening to the rain and the quiet sounds of him moving around in the living room. It should have felt strange, lying in a stranger's sheets. Instead, it felt like the first almost home she'd had in years. Out in the storm, the city kept howling. But inside that small apartment, wrapped in his hoodie and his warmth lingering on the pillow, Ember realized something that scared and comforted her all at once. She hadn't just found shelter from the rain. She might have just found shelter from herself. Morning smelled like coffee and rain-washed air. Ember woke to pale light sneaking past thin curtains and the low clink of something in the kitchen. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was. The sheets were unfamiliar, warmer on one side, and the pillow beneath her cheek smelled faintly like soap and a man she barely knew. Then the storm came back to her in flashes. The broken car, Malik's hands in the rain, his hoodie around her, his couch, his stories. The way her chest had felt less heavy just sitting across from him. She rolled onto her back and stared at the ceiling. This is insane, she thought. I slept in a stranger's bed. But her body didn't feel that panicked, hollow buzz it did after bad decisions. She felt rested, safe even, a fragile kind of safe that made her want to hide under the covers and also go stand in the doorway just to see him. She sat up, the oversized t-shirt slipping down her shoulder. Her hair was a mess, mascara a faint shadow under her eyes. Thick thighs swung over the side of the bed, bare feet touching cool floor. Ember padded down the short hall, one hand tugging Malik's hoodie closer. He was in the kitchenette, back to her, moving around with easy efficiency. Dark t-shirt stretched across his shoulders, sweatpants hanging low on his hips. A kettle steamed, toast popped up, and some kind of jazz hummed quietly from his phone speaker on the counter. He glanced up when he sensed her, like his body had learned the weight of her presence overnight. "Hey," he said, and there was warmth in that one syllable that almost undid her. "Morning." "Morning," she echoed, voice rough. He tried to hide it, but his gaze flicked over her quickly, bare legs, hoodie, sleepy face, then snapped back to her eyes. No lingering, no smirk. Still, heat crawled up her neck. "Coffee okay?" he asked. "Or tea? Or both, if you're on a mission?" "Coffee is very okay," Ember said, like spiritually necessary. He smiled and poured a mug, handing it to her. Their fingers brushed again. That tiny contact sent a little spark up her arm. She took a sip, closing her eyes in appreciation. "Oh, this is good. Like, disturbingly good for a man with no visible coffee machine shrine." "My one luxury," Malik said. "Everything else can fall apart, but we're not doing instant coffee in this house." They moved to the tiny table by the window. Rain had settled into a light drizzle outside. Cars drove past on wet streets, leaving ripples in puddles. For a few minutes, the morning was quiet. Toast, coffee, the soft clatter of forks. Reality tried to creep in around the edges. Work, bills, the busted car waiting down the block. But it all felt far away in that little bubble of warmth. "I should call a tow," Ember said eventually, setting her mug down with a soft clink. "Or a shop, or something adult and responsible like that." "I can take a look again," Malik replied. "In daylight this time. Might still need a battery, but I can at least get it to crank enough to limp to my shop. We'll give you the rescued from the storm discount." She inhaled slowly. "I don't want to take advantage. Ember," he cut in gently. "It's okay to let someone help you." She stared at him. "I don't really know how to do that," she admitted, voice small. "Usually I'm the one fixing things for other people. Designs, resumes, photos, whatever. I'm the friend who edits dating profiles and proofreads texts. Letting someone fix something for me feels like I'm asking too much." "You're not asking," Malik said. "I'm offering. There's a difference." The words sank into some place in her chest that had never been spoken to like that. "Okay," she whispered. "Then, thank you." They finished breakfast, and Malik went to grab his tool bag. Ember changed back into her now dry dress and coat, folding the hoodie carefully, and then hesitating. He caught her in the doorway, hoodie in her hands. "You can keep it," he said. "I can't just steal your clothes," she protested. "You're not stealing," he replied. "Consider it a loan with no due date." She looked down at the hoodie, then back up at him. Why? His gaze was steady. "So if you ever get caught in another storm, you remember you don't have to stand there alone." Her throat tightened. She clutched the hoodie to her chest. They walked to her car together. In daylight, the street looked more ordinary, almost bland. It felt wrong that a night that had felt so enormous could shrink into something the city would forget by lunch. Malik leaned over the engine again, wiping away water, tightening connections, checking the battery. Ember watched, arms wrapped around herself, the chill seeping in more from nerves now than cold. He straightened up at last. "Try it." She slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine hesitated, then coughed itself into a rough but functional rumble. She grinned, sudden and bright. Malik's answering smile hit her like sunlight after days of grey. "See?" he said. She just needed someone to treat her like she wasn't disposable. Ember's fingers tightened on the wheel. She knew he was talking about the car. It didn't feel like he was just talking about the car. She got out, heart thudding. "How much do I owe you?" "Breakfast," he said. "Sometime when it's not the apocalypse outside." The words hung there between them. "Are you asking me out?" Ember asked, breath-catching. He didn't look away. "Yeah, I am." Fear fled first. Sharp and familiar. Dates meant expectations, judgments, the inevitable moment someone's eyes calculated what she weighed versus what they wanted. "You saw me on my worst night," she blurted. "Mascara meltdown, dress glued to every roll, crying in my car. You didn't even flinch. What happens when the novelty wears off?" Malik's brow furrowed. "Ember," he said slowly, "last night wasn't your worst. It was just one honest storm. I've seen people at their actual worst. You were hurt and tired and still making jokes. And if you think your body is something I'm enduring until I get to the good parts, you're wrong." Heat flooded her eyes. She blinked up at the cloudy sky. "You don't know me," she whispered. "Not yet," he agreed. "That's what breakfast is for." She let out a shaky laugh. "You're really not going to let me run, are you?" He smiled, small and soft. "If you want to go, I'll let you go. But I'm going to make it very clear I'd like you to stay." Something inside her, tired of bracing against every impact, loosened. "Okay," Ember said, voice trembling but sure. "Breakfast." They exchanged numbers. As she drove away, hoodie on the passenger seat like a quiet promise, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Malik stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, watching until she turned the corner. Breakfast turned into coffee. Coffee turned into walks. Walks turned into evenings at his apartment where her things began to appear. Hair tie on his table, mug she claimed as hers, a sketchbook in his bookshelf like it had always belonged there. Weeks passed. Not dramatic, just steady. Ember learned that Malik hummed when he concentrated, that he always gave the last piece of toast away, that he checked his phone obsessively on nights he worked at the shelter because he never stopped thinking about his people. Malik learned that Ember doodled on napkins without realizing it, that she snorted when she laughed too hard, that she had this way of lighting up when she talked about clients who finally believed they deserved a good logo, a real brand, a visible presence. Not everything was easy. There were days when Ember caught her reflection and flinched, convinced Malik would wake up and see what every other man had seen. There were nights when he'd go quiet, eyes far away, haunted by faces from the shelter who didn't have happy endings. One Friday, weeks later, the sky darkened again. Thunder rolled in the distance as they left a small restaurant. Ember's hand was looped through Malik's arm, her curves wrapped in a deep red dress that made her feel dangerous and beautiful at the same time, until a group of guys passing by laughed a little too loudly. "Damn, big girl ate good," one of them muttered, not quite under his breath. Her whole body froze. Blood rushed to her ears. The old humiliation rose so fast she could taste it. She felt Malik's arm tense. Every muscle in him went tight. He could have turned, fought, made a scene. Instead, he glanced down at her, searching her face. "What do you need right now?" he asked quietly. "You want to ignore them? Roast them? You want me to say something? You want to leave?" She stared at him, thrown off balance by the question. No one had ever asked her that before. Men either joined in the joke, pretended not to hear, or tried to defend her in ways that made it worse. "What do you think I should do?" she asked, voice thin. "I think," Malik said slowly, "those dudes already spend too much of their lives taking up space they don't deserve. I don't want to give them any more of yours. But if saying something out loud would help you reclaim this moment, I'll do it. This is your storm. I'm just your umbrella." The sharpness in her chest softened into something liquid. She took a breath. The rain started, soft at first. "Let's walk away," she said. "But can you just hold my hand?" He didn't hesitate. His hand closed around hers, warm and solid, fingers lacing with hers like they'd always been meant to fit that way. As they walked into the growing rain, Ember realized she wasn't shrinking. She wasn't hunching or sucking in her stomach or trying to disappear. She was walking, head high, in her red dress, next to a man who didn't act like her body was a problem to solve. The storm broke for real a block later. Rain poured, thunder cracking overhead. Malik laughed, pure and bright, and pulled her under a narrow awning. They were both already soaked. Her hair clung to her cheeks, his shirt darkened, muscles outlined in the wet fabric. The street reflected neons and headlights, everything shimmering. "This feels familiar," Ember said, breathless. "Yeah," Malik replied, eyes locked on hers. "Except this time you're not alone in your car." Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might shake her apart. "I was scared that night," she admitted, voice barely audible over the rain. "Not just of being stranded, of being seen. All of me. I kept thinking, if he really looks, he won't stay." "I did really look," he said. "I saw a woman soaked to the skin, still cracking jokes, still apologizing for taking up space she had every right to. And all I could think was, God, I hope she lets me stick around long enough to convince her she's enough." The world narrowed to the two of them. The heat of his hand, the storm, the way his eyes searched hers like there was an answer he hoped she'd say out loud. "Malik," she whispered. You do, every day." He exhaled, something like relief and disbelief mingling together. "Good," he said. "Because I'm in this. Not just the easy nights, but the messy stuff. The storms where you forget you're worth shelter. The days when I forget I am too. I don't want to just be the guy who helped you with your car once. I want to be yours. If you want that." Her vision blurred. The first tear slipped free and mingled with the rain on her cheeks. "I want that," Ember said. "I want you, the way you see me, the way you ask, the way you stay." He stepped closer, slowly, giving her every chance to pull back, his free hand lifted, hovering near her cheek. "Can I?" he asked. "Yes," she breathed. His palm cupped her face, thumb brushing a damp strand of hair back. Then he kissed her. It wasn't fireworks and movie soundtracks. It was better. It was warm lips and rain-cooled skin, and the feeling of someone choosing you, fully, in the middle of a world that kept telling you were too much and not enough at the same time. When they broke apart, both breathing harder, Ember pressed her forehead to his. "We met in a storm," she murmured, "and somehow I got this." "This," Malik said, resting his hand over her heart, "goes both ways. You're my shelter too, Ember. When the world gets loud, you're the one place I don't have to be the guy holding it all together. I don't want to leave that. Not now. Not ever, if I can help it." Lightning flashed, turning his eyes into mirrors of light and shadow. She saw her reflection there, teary, flushed, thick, human, and for once she didn't wince. She smiled. "Then don't," she said. "Stay." He kissed her again, the storm raging around them, and this time she didn't feel small under it. She felt held, chosen, seen. Years later, when people asked how they met, they'd laugh and say, "In a storm." What they didn't always explain was the truth they both carried. They hadn't just found each other that night. They'd found a shelter they never wanted to leave, inside 4 thin apartment walls, inside a borrowed hoodie, inside 2 hands that refused to let the other stand in the rain alone ever again.